Today's episode is all about real people, real stories, and real recovery. We welcome two great guests. First, Dana Brock. He's an advocate for our Recover for Life campaign, and he has a truly amazing story and message of hope. And then we speak with Kirstin Buckner, founder of Uni5d Outcomes, which helps prevent future problems by connecting youth with positive role models and mentors. Two great conversations, you won't want to miss them. All that and more coming up on Health is Real.
Come on in, stay a while. Andrew Stinson here alongside Zach Watson. The name of the podcast is Health is Real from Franklin County Public Health. Coming to you today from Memorial Hall, downtown Columbus, Ohio. Zach Watson, how's it going today?
I think it's going pretty good, Andrew.
Going pretty good?
Can't complain.
Our guest today, Dana Brock. He is a Columbus, Ohio resident. He is a community advocate. He's also here advocating for the Recover for Life campaign. Dana Brock, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, guys.
Sure. And you know what? Tell the listeners a little bit just about who you are and how you would describe yourself today.
Right. So my name is Dana Brock, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, and I absolutely am an advocate Buckeye fan.
Excellent.
Probably just like everybody in this room or in this city.
Yeah.
So no news there. A little bit about me today. I guess I could say that, I'm grateful for 9 years and 2 months, and I believe it is 5 days today, clean and sober.
Wow. Okay.
It has been a journey and one that I have been excited to be on because it has allowed me the opportunity to help so many people.
Yeah, so your story is featured in our Recover for Life campaign, and we're so happy that you're involved with that. For listeners who may not know as much about you or your story, tell us a little bit about sort of where you came from, your upbringing, and sort of how you got to where you are today.
Right. Well, again, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. The upbringing was not so glorious. I can say, I unfortunately, like many other people, was born and raised in a domestic violence household. And in that household, not only was there violence, but there was also a lot of drug use. And so that contributed to some of the many, I'll say, mishaps and poor decision making and sort of acting out and things throughout my life that led to some very dire consequences and some very, just things that I am not proud of today. And so really what that looked like at that time, growing up in I was born in 1975, so gangs in the inner city neighborhoods were kind of up and coming, but prior to that, there were like motorcycle clubs, motorcycle gangs. And my abusive father, who was a general in one of those motorcycle gangs, was that perpetrator of violence in my household. And so again, growing up, there were a lot of like parties and things going on in the household around children that just should not have been happening. I can remember being a kid, smelling the funny smoke in the air, seeing the drinks of alcohol and things like that on the table. There was also sexual activity that I walked into that I was not supposed to see as a kid. But we lived in a 2-bedroom kind of apartment that, had a bunch of people running in and out of it at all days and times and hours of the night. And so it really was a very unhealthy environment for a child to grow up in. But again, like I said, that kind of really contributed to what I would believe was the conduct of a man. It was normalized violence and drug use in my household. So I would say that in some ways I became numb to it because it was so normal. And again, it contributed to how I would then grow up as an adult and begin to perpetuate some of the same behaviors and things like that. One of the things that a mentor of mine said to me is that trauma not transformed is transferred, right?
Yes.
Hurt people in essence. And so one very, very vivid memory of mine is I was about 6 years old, and my father, who I would later learn was my stepfather, was abusing my mother physically. And I, of course, wanted to intervene to help my mother. And so I began to, kind of run to my mother's rescue. And this man turned around and he punched me in my chest like I was an adult male. And I remember kind of flying across the room, tumbling across the floor, and banging my head up against the wall, being very dizzy and disoriented, and also not being able to breathe. Felt like I was going to die, to be honest with you. But then when I was able to kind of like come to, I remember the only thing I was able to do was let out a cry. I mean, I'm 6 years old. I just got punched by a grown man. What do you expect a 6-year-old child to do? And I remember my mother trying, her hardest to fight him because of what he had just done, and him pushing her down and walking over to me while I was crying, and excuse my French, but telling me to stop crying like a little bitch before he gave me something to cry about. And so it was at 6 years old that I began to shut off my emotions. And the only emotion or expression that seemed to be allowed in my house was anger. Now, my mother showed love, and she, to her best, I believe, wanted to protect me and my younger brother, because it was just me and my younger brother at the time. Wanted to protect me and my younger brother, but unfortunately, she was caught in a cycle of abuse that at that time had no kind of way out of, or didn't know how to get out of. And there was things in my mother's story that I would find out later in life that kind of contributed to why she stayed in an abusive relationship. But at that time, as a kid, you can't fathom that, right? You're just like, why can't we get out of here, Mom? What's going on? Like, you just want to escape. So later that evening, he called me over to him and told me in these exact words, "Come here, boy, I'm going to make a man out of you," right? And me being terrified of what happened earlier, I treaded very lightly. But in this household, if you didn't listen to him, there were consequences. And those consequences were physical. So, I walked over to him with extreme trepidation. But he handed me a beer and he told me, "Drink this. It'll put some hair on your chest," right? And so I proceeded to drink. And I'll be honest with you, I felt like hair was growing in my chest as I was swallowing that beer. Because I just remember the warm sensation of the alcohol. And I remember after ingesting the alcohol, kind of feeling like, I think I always kind of equate this to like Popeye, for those who may have been old enough to know the cartoon Popeye, popping open his can of spinach. And once he popped open that can of spinach, he instantly became strong. Mm-hmm. I believe that's why alcohol is dubbed liquid courage, because once I drank that alcohol, I felt almost instantly invincible. Right. I felt like I could take on him, and I felt like I could take on the world. And I remember wanting that feeling all the time. And so at a very young age, I would sneak into the refrigerator and drink sips of beer when the adults weren't looking, as they were partying, playing cards and dominoes at the table. And I'm running throughout the house. I would sneak and grab a beer off the table, or what I thought was water. I later would find out was vodka, and drink some of that. Right. I remember the white mounds of powder on the table. I remember thinking to myself, why are they putting sugar in their nose? Right. But, of course, later in life, I will find out what that was. And so I honestly, in looking back, believe by the time I was 10, 11 years old, I was full blown drinking alcohol kind of on the regular, sneaking to get it. Me and some of my friends who were around the same age, who were kind of going through the same things in their household. We were all meeting under a tree, which was like our little clubhouse. And some of us would have beers that we had stolen out the refrigerator from our parents, and we would begin to act like them. I remember very young, at like 11 years old, we'd take a piece of notebook paper, roll up leaves off the tree, and pretend we were smoking marijuana, and we were drinking our beers, and, mimicking this behavior and these things that we saw growing up. And so, again, that would contribute to, my drug use, my behaviors in my relationships and things like that later in life.
So was there a moment in your life when you realized that you needed, something needed to change for you? And if so, what was that moment?
There were several moments, I'll say, throughout my life, where I realized that I needed to change when I realized that almost every job I had, I lost because of my drug use. I lost my wife and children because of my drug use. But those things at that time, while I was in the grip of my addiction, just didn't seem weighty enough to kind of outweigh my desire to continue to want to numb and escape the pain. And so it wouldn't be, man, 20 some odd years later, on March 31st of 2017, when I had already experienced several incarcerations, over 20 years of addiction, many, many, many failed relationships. And in those many failed relationships, I was the common denominator of why those relationships didn't work. Again, growing up in that type of household, I myself became the monster that I once hated. So in my relationships, I have become physically abusive, verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. And those were a part of my character as early as 18, all the way up until about 42 years old. And so on March 31st of 2017, I had found myself yet again incarcerated for a violent crime. And it was, the contributing factor was the cocaine and the crack cocaine, kind of induced rage type of things and that I was experiencing throughout, my life. I found myself incarcerated yet again, and I kind of looked around, and throughout my life, we didn't talk about this, yet, or didn't necessarily bring it up in the kind of recap of a young boy. But at, the time that I had lost my wife and children, I had attempted suicide by placing a gun in my mouth and pulling the trigger. And it was only by the grace of God that gun jammed. This was a gun that I had used several times in the commissions of crimes and things like that, unfortunately, in those commissions of those crimes and things, the gun was trusty. But at this time, I put that gun in my mouth and it did not fire. And it still wasn't enough at that time to change my mind. The only thing I remember thinking is, man, I can't even do that right, because that's how hopeless I was. That's the kind of state that I was in. I'm like, man, I can't do life right. I can't do marriage right. I can't be a father. I can't even rid the world of me correctly, is the kind of hopeless state that I was in, right? And so when I looked around on that March 31st of 2017 and found myself incarcerated again, I remember just thinking to myself, like, okay, God, I don't know what it is, why you keep sparing me, what it is I'm supposed to do, right? I was a piece of crap dad. I was a piece of crap husband, brother, son, friend, you name it. I had dropped the ball in so many areas of my life, right? And I just wanted to give up. And, but I believe he had another plan for me. And at that time, I just said, okay, what is it? I can't kill myself. You won't kill me. Just, I survived a gunshot, a stabbing, all kind of things. And I'm just like, so I did something that, I probably hadn't done in a long time. Matter of fact, I hadn't. I remember getting out of that steel rack in the jail cell and walking into that shower. And for the first time since I was 6 years old, I cried, like the 6-year-old boy finally got to cry again. And on March 31st of 2017, when the 6-year-old little Dana finally got to cry again, there was something that came over me. There was just a freedom, a newfound freedom. I remember praying the most sincerest prayer I ever prayed in my life and asking God to take the desire, the taste, the thought, and everything that was not of him out of me. Because I'm here for a purpose. I don't know what that is, but I want to surrender to it. I no longer want to do things Dana's way. Lord, I just want to do them your way, whatever that looks like. I've tried everything else. So Lord, this time I'm going to try you, and I'm going to try recovery. I'm going to try sobriety.
Yeah, no, that's a very powerful story. And when you talk about recovery, I still think a lot of people don't realize that recovery isn't something you just do once and then you're done with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called recover for life because it's an ongoing process, right?
Absolutely.
So what has that recovery process looked like for you? What tools or resources or people have helped you the most?
Right. So when we talk about recover for life, to your point, this is a daily walk. right? Even with the 9 years and some change of sobriety and clean time that I have to daily remember uh, what that looks like for me. Recovery teaches us that, we do not regret the past, nor do we wish to shut the door on it. And the purpose of that is that when you have those moments, you want to always play the tape all the way through, right? So if I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling like a drink would make that day better, I have to play that tape all the way through and remember what that one drink did to my marriage. If I'm having a tough challenge and I feel like, oh man, a line of cocaine would really help numb this moment, right? I have to remember what that line of cocaine turns into and how far that line actually goes if I make that decision, right? And what that line leads to. So, man, listen, it is daily checking in with my sponsor. It is still going to meetings. It is still, facilitating meetings and facilitating groups today, which, are some of the things that I do through my nonprofit, and staying connected to the things that helped me get to this 9 years and some change of recovery. Because you never, as a recovering addict, you never get to a place where you just kind of like plateau and I don't have to do this thing anymore. I think, unfortunately, the pandemic showed me that, because there were people who had over 30, 40 years of clean time who went back out during COVID. And so that also was a reminder for me that, hey, listen, no matter how long this thing has to be, and I love what this stands for, because Recover for Life is exactly that. This has to be a lifelong journey. This has to be a lifelong commitment. This has to be a lifelong process that you stay connected to and that you stay in order for you to get to a place of peace, prosperity, and productivity that allows you to live a life that I really feel like we were purposed to live. The way we do that is by staying connected. And if you, like me, had the unfortunate decision making of choosing drugs over, other avenues that could help you, be the type of person you were purposed to be, then Recover for Life and then recovery is also the best, I think, way to get back to that purpose and get back connected to what you were really meant here for.
One point that you had made when you were talking about your upbringing is this idea of being a man, being a real man.
Absolutely.
Going through recovery, what did you learn most about what being a real man is?
Absolutely. So just to go back to that, my kind of the image of a man that I had was the one who was always dominating, who was controlling, right? And it was my way or the highway. I also grew up in an era in the late 80s, early 90s, where in my neighborhoods, growing up in the inner city neighborhoods, music and movies really played a heavy influence in cultivating the image of masculinity and what that looked like. And so, I grew up in an era where a man was defined by how many women he slept with, how nice his clothes was, how much money he had, and how fancy his car was, right? All lies. Today, recovery has taught me that a man is responsible, that a man is accountable, that a man is reliable, and a man does the right thing when nobody else is looking. So for me today, the definition of manhood, I would define as one who is dedicated to making sure that he leaves a legacy that he can be proud of, that those who love him or surround him, that encounter him, can be proud to know him, right? And say that, hey, this guy was a great guy. And I met this man, and this man helped change my vision, helped change my perception, you leave an impression, a positive impression on people wherever you go. And there are some biblical things that I could throw in there, but I don't want to get too preachy. One thing that I hold on to is that the word of God tells me that when I was a child, I behaved as a child, I spoke as a child, I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things, right? And that's just not toys, right? Because honestly, I still love my Transformers and GI Joes and things like that, and my X-Men for sure. But it is childish behaviors. It is childish mindset. It is childlike thinking, right?
Yeah. And before we go to the next question, I just want to say I really appreciate your sort of take and definition on what it means to be masculine and what it means to be a man. I think we're sort of all coming around to the conversation about what happens to young boys. All of us in this room, whether we like to admit it or not, depending, I guess, on what area you're raised into, it's like there's this expectation, right, that you have to be a certain way. I mean, we couldn't have grown up in two different sort of households, Dana, but in my household, I've had to reckon for years with it was like anytime I was going through something tough or something that was really upsetting to me emotionally, it was just like, well, what are you going to do about it? Cry? And that sort of thing. And it's just like, that's a child. And again, parents were raised with playbooks, and it's like, oh, well, this is how I was raised. It's okay if this happens. But, it is really fascinating for all of us, I guess, to be older and that sort of thing, and think about how the little boys are just raised with some form of expectation, right? And I feel like how the rest of it folds out and sort of, and how, especially how masculinity is sort of marketed from politically to culturally, and it feels almost like young boys and young men are being told, like, this is this version of masculinity, and this is how you deal with that expectation. And I think hearing your version of it makes the most sense to me, because to me it's also what it takes to be a good human being.
Absolutely.
And that sort of thing. So I just wanted to say I appreciate it. It was a great definition that you rolled out. So
yeah, thank you. And just to add, some more to that. I think some of us or all of us maybe even heard of the analogy as the man in the box, right? And that's kind of how we're raised. Me and young boys are raised in a box that says you have to be tough, right? That if you fall and scrape your knee, you don't cry about it, you shake it off. You're a man, toughen up. All of these things that we are taught, that are imparted into us, not only just in our household, in society. The commercialization of what manhood looks like and masculinity looks like. Even the action movies. I'm a diehard Bruce Willis, Schwarzenegger fan. These guys are taking bullets and knives and things like that, and they're just keep going on and whooping everybody's butt. And that's the perception young boys see, and that what we believe. But in all actuality, a gunshot hurts. A knife hurts, and you're gonna cry. And if you're lucky enough to live, and so these things that and again, I grew up in an era where if you didn't fight, right? Because I'm not the baddest guy in the world, and I didn't like fighting, right? But of course, I told you I grew up in this very abusive, very, very violent household, and I had to fight. And if I didn't fight, there were consequences for that too. You better not come home crying about somebody hit you or things like that. And so, again, just being put in that box that says, hey, if you don't fight, and again, pardon my French, but you're a sissy, you're a punk, you're weak, you're not a man. My name is Dana. And in the 70s, that wasn't very popular. So I used to get teased on, you're a girl, and things like that. And so again, that man in the box, those things that young boys are taught that they have to be, really are damaging, right? And one of the things, and I'll end with this, I think the most kind of detrimental thing that can happen to a young man, which happened to me, is when my mother did finally get the courage to leave my abusive stepfather. I was about 12 years old, and she had to work second shift jobs and other odd jobs to provide for me and my younger brother. And so I was told at 12 years old that I'm the man of the house, that I have to be the man of the house. So immediately my childhood was stripped away, right? More so than it already had been. And then the image of a man that I had was this abusive stepfather. And so you're telling me at 12 years old that that's who I have to be.
Well, and really quick side note, because you were talking about your name, I remember I was an avid collector of basketball cards in the 90s, and I loved one of my favorite player names ever was Dana Barros.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Dana Barros really took the name, like he really brought it there for everyone. I just thought, I remember being so young, I'm like, Dana Barros is a cool name. And it was like, normally you wouldn't see a guy named Dana, but he seemed so cool and everything. So I just had to say that. Like Dana, I think Dana is a great name.
Dana Carvey from SNL too.
Oh, yeah.
I love Dana Carvey.
Dana Carvey is amazing.
But I'll tell you, for me, since I'm from the neighborhood, the inner city neighborhood. So for me, what made my name cool was Dana Dane, which was a rapper at the time.
There
was a rapper named Dana Dane. And so when he kind of got famous, got popular, then in the inner city, Dana became, much more of a cooler name because I went from being Dana, right, to this alter ego kind of Dana Dane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that guy was hell. But yeah, I'm not talking about the rapper. I'm talking about me.
Yeah.
He was hell, right? And so that kind of became my street name then, Dana Dane. And so, yeah.
Well, and so leading into this next question, you've described in such vivid, you are able to describe things in a really, really vivid way. Like when you're describing your childhood, I almost felt like I was there with you and everything. And it's like almost like they're in a movie, and a really sad movie, given like your childhood and everything else like that. But given all of those tough things that we've discussed, sort of what brings you joy now, and what sort of goals and dreams are you working towards today?
Right. One of the biggest things that bring me joy now is my sobriety. Being clean, being free from drugs and alcohol is amazing every day to wake up with, and I don't have to worry about a hangover or what did I do last night, consequences like that. So that's number one. Not number one. These are not in particular order, but I will say the number one thing that brings me joy is being a grandfather. Just being a grandpa is, man, the way my grandchildren's eyes light up when they see me and when they just run up to me, Paw, it just makes me feel so good. Again, when we go back to the definition of a man and things like that. And so growing up the way that I did, I know I hated to see my father come, but I love my grandfather. He instilled a lot of good qualities in me, and there was also some things about him that weren't so good. But just knowing that they will never see me drink and drug, they will never, I will never be incarcerated, in their out of their lives, things like that. That brings me joy. That motivates me more than anything to continue to be the man that I am today. I was just with my grandson yesterday, and, he plays football. He's 7 years old. He'll be 8 in October. And he loves like some of the same players that I love, and he tries to mimic some Buckeye players. Jeremiah Smith, of course, is one of his favorite.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
He's everybody's favorite here.
Yeah.
So. But and then he calls me, and he was telling me last night about how when he was playing flag football, he hurt his thigh, and Paw, I think I'm on injured reserve. It's the things that comes out of this 7-year-old's mouth will blow your mind, right? And so we have FaceTime like almost every day, and that is my joy. Like he'll call me during work hours, and if I'm at work and I got some time in the office, we'll just talk and just being a grandfather, man. That is the most honorable title or position I think that a man can have, to help contribute to their upbringing and, their teachings and things like that. And so I'm fully committed to being a pawpaw and just making sure he has the best experiences in life. So I have been blessed to be a college graduate, today, something I never had envisioned for me, right? I've been able to obtain my associate's degree in social work through Columbus State. And also my CDCA. I'm currently working on my LCDC, which is Licensed Chemical Dependency Counseling licensure. I'm also going back to school this fall at Franklin University to obtain my bachelor's in criminal justice with a minor in public administration. And then once I complete that, I'm going to go for the master's in public administration. So those are just some of the goals and things that I'm chasing down right now that I want to continue to further my education, especially in this space of reentry and recidivism and incarceration, because it's a part of my story. It's also a part of my passion and my purpose, again, to help me help others. And so those are just some of the things that I'm chasing down right now. And I'm married, and I've been with my wife now for 5 years, married for 3.
Nice.
Healthy relationship, healthiest relationship I've ever been in.
I mean, it's clear that sharing your story is something that's very important to you, and everything that's gone on in your life. You'd imagine some people may not want to share their story; they may want to just be over by themselves. But you're very involved in this. I know we mentioned the Recover for Life campaign. Why is sharing your story with others so important to you?
Well, the biggest thing I think that for me, and again, I appreciate very, very, very much being able to participate in the Recover for Life campaign, because it has helped to lend me a voice. and has given me a platform in order to share my experience, strength, and hope. And I think the most important thing about that is for me sharing it. Recovery tells us that you keep what you have by giving it away. And so in order for me to keep this newfound joy, in order for me to keep this purpose, this passion, I have to give it away. And the way I do that is by continuing to tell my story. The way I do that is by continuing to spread hope, letting someone else who's experienced domestic violence, been both a victim, a survivor, maybe even a perpetrator, much like, I was, someone who has been an addict of so many drugs, because I was the whatever you got, we're doing it type of addict, right? Someone who maybe has failed as a father, as a husband, as a brother, as a son, as a nephew, as a cousin, or as a friend type. Let them know through my story and by telling it that there is hope and that change is possible, that real transformation can take place if you decide that that's what you want. What that looks like for everyone is different. And I think telling the story or telling my story helps people maybe get an idea of what their path may look like for them. And I think that that's why that's important. I feel like, if I was just to hoard this thing all to myself, right, I would be doing myself a disservice, right? And then I don't believe that that's what God spared me from all of that for, you know what I mean? And so I feel like it's also my duty to tell this story. I feel like it's also my purpose to make sure that other people know that there's hope out there. And I've personally acronized hope as being helping other people every day, right? And when you help other people every day by telling your story, by one small act of kindness or anything like that, that you also inspire that hope, and you also inspire someone else to do something different for themselves or for others. And because I've spread a lot of negativity, and so the goal today is just to continue to let other people know that they also can recover, and that recover for life is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. One more quick question. A theme has been to me is youth, and your story started when you were so young.
Yes.
And there's unfortunately, probably other young people out there going through similar things that you went through. If 6-year-old Dana was sitting here in that chair next to you today, what would you say to him?
Man, I would tell him that I love him. I would tell him that he's worthy. And I would tell him to remain strong because it does get better. I would tell him that it's okay to cry. I would tell him that it's okay to be afraid. And I would also tell him that he matters. He matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very powerful stuff.
Anything else, Zach, you wanted to ask?
Well, I have a statement and a question, and I love that when I came up with this question in my mind, it is about a childish topic, and you were just like, all these childish things, and I was like, oh, well, I just thought of the most childish question. But really quick, I just want to step in and say, if I could take 6-year-old Andrew aside, I'd be like, please stop liking the Cleveland Browns. They will only bring you misery. This life is not good. Yeah. You got to. This is an abusive relationship. Man, you have to get out of it.
You know what? There's some similarities, I think, in that regard. But
absolutely.
The childish thing I wanted to ask you, because you said this and you kind of got excited about it, and I was just curious. You brought up the X-Men. Who is your favorite X-Man?
Dude, Wolverine.
Of course, yes.
Of course, Wolverine. I mean, it's
tough being from Columbus and liking anything named Wolverine.
Well, I will say that, especially, growing up in my Buckeye pajamas and everything like that. But Wolverine, for me, embodied who I was at that time. Here's this short guy with all this rage, right? And he was just not to be messed with. And the thing that really made me gravitate to him was not only could I identify with him as an individual, I could identify with his rage. I could identify with his pain, but I can also identify with the deep down under all that rage and pain was a good person, right? And so for me, that's what really made me gravitate to him. Really made me gravitate to Logan, and I love, watching my comic books come to life today in these movies and things like that. I'm such a nerd when it comes to Star Wars and Star Trek, and Wolverine and comic books and things like that, and those were things that I had to kind of hide too growing up. I couldn't really be myself, especially in the inner city neighborhood. I'm a lot of people don't know this about me, but I love rock and roll, like, you know what I mean? But, growing up in gang culture and things like that in my neighborhood, nobody could know that I was listening to Quiet Riot and White Snake and Def Leppard and stuff like that. I had to play the Snoop Dogs and, the NWAs and stuff like that. Nobody could know that deep down inside I was rocking out, dude. Like, you know what I mean? And so, but now today I rock out with no shame. I don't care who knows it, but,
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Dana Brock. He's a Columbus, Ohio resident. He's a Recover for Life campaign advocate. Dana, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
Absolutely, man. Again, thank you guys for having me in any time.
We are really excited today. We are here with Kirstin Buckner. She is the founder and executive director of Uni5d Outcomes. Kirstin, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you all for having me. This is so exciting. I'm so excited to be here.
So, for the listeners out there, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, I am born and raised Columbus, Ohio. I say that with passion. I say that with authority, because I am through and through a Buckeye. So if you say something about Michigan, then I don't like it. But I am not only a community member, a mother. I have a 15-year-old son. He is thriving, but he's also teaching me many lessons at the same time. And including that, I am a public health professional. And so my work is rooted in community. I've been from the east side of Columbus. And what that entails is a lot of my fabric involves rec centers and community drives and just connecting to, again, different walks of life. And so that gave me a passion to not only say, okay, I want to do something with community, but I also like a little bit of health too. I like how our brains work. I like how our bodies function. I like how to use science to not only, and I'm going to use the word, I probably didn't know this back then, but mitigate, as far as health disparity. So I am a person that is here to make things better, I would say, in a positive, impactful way, however I can do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Uni5d.
Yes, my organization, or the organization I am over, Uni5d Outcomes, is I would say a trauma-informed organization. It is backed by being a catalyst of change, using science, again, from the work of Dr. Perry and also Nadine Burke-Harris. But we use the work that drives to mitigate ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, in our communities. And so the number one, as far as prevention tool to go against ACEs. When we talk about ACEs, it is connecting to an adult, a responsible adult. And just to break down what ACEs are, right? Average childhood experiences. There are events. They are complex development events. We have big events, but they are some sort of incidents or events that occur in our life. So let me break that down. So when you talk about events in a person's life, I'm giving in a big event such as a fire, a police run, or as far as a death, right? That is on a high level as far as big events, as far as when we come to ACEs. When we talk about complex, we're talking about as far as a child or a person moving 5 times out of a year, or we're talking about their parent was incarcerated. They were there one day and then the next day they're not. And then now, how do you function? Same for when we talk about the opioid epidemic, when we talk about grandparents are raising actual kids out here, or their children, and they went from a 1-bedroom home and now I have 5 children in my home and now I have to accommodate for that. And so when we talk about events that occur in our life, adverse childhood experiences go into that part, and they play into that. And that is what we do in our organization. We not only identify it, and also we acknowledge it, but also we understand that that is not your destiny. So again, going back to the number one preventive factor, connecting to an adult, we provide mentorship. So our mentorship is our catalyst as far as to prevent those harms as far as against ACEs. And our mentors are first responders. And our first responders include public safety. So we all work with Columbus Division of Fire, Franklin County Sheriff's Office, and also Ohio State Highway Patrol. And we also have community advocates involved as far as in our program. But it is around public safety. So you're in that service, you're in that field, but they connect to our young person 9 months out the year. And they do that with one touch point as far as during a week, as far as during, so 1 hour during a week. And then we also have community events as far as in our program. So we do activations, but the whole point of our organization is not only to have connection, to provide resources and relationships, but also, again, to mitigate those harms. And how do you do that is actually having the brain science of providing predictability, providing management, providing consistency, and providing actual hands-on approach. And so our first responders are not in their suited and booted, right? They don't have their weapons. They don't have their as far as their fire gear and all the things. No, we humanize the approach. So they are in the field playing kickball. They're in the field going to the OSU events as far as our football games and Blue Jackets. So yeah, that is unified outcomes in a sense.
Absolutely. That's great. No, and I think people may not even understand how those ACEs scores,
Right. Yeah.
how that matters
It
down
does
the road.
matter. It really does.
Now, how does Unified, if you can speak a little bit to how Unified works with Franklin County Public Health in this space with the Overdose Data to Action grant?
Absolutely. So our tagline is trauma to triumph. And so when we talk about how, and that actually goes into the next question, how does that fit into the grant? We're talking about trauma. We're actually talking about how we can mitigate the harms of the scores of if you have, and so and let me break this down. ACEs is a survey in a sense. So there are 8 to 10 questions, if I believe. And so you will take this survey, and I'm going to give you my number. My number was a 6 from ACEs. Everyone in our program, parents, children, they take the ACEs score, right? And it goes into as far as our social determinants of health as well. And so when you take your score and you look at your score and you say, listen, I have been impacted by, again, divorce. I've been impacted by incarceration. I've been impacted by homelessness. I've been impacted by as far as just certain, again, those determinants of health and food insecurity, right? We take those numbers and we identify that and say, listen, that's not who you are, right? And so when we talk about this for the OD2A, am I making sure? Grant.
OD2A, yeah.
Yep. OD2A grant, it is a sense of how are we not only bringing the reduction to risk as far as harms against substance uses, right? And also against as far as violence in other areas, but primarily substance use. How are we mitigating that? And we do that with our young people. So we can capture and gravitate and actually get a hold of our young people. Again, we work with 10 to 17 years old, but if we can get them at a young age to identify that the ways and the harms and the quality of life that you can actually obtain can happen at a early age, and give them the actual resources, they can become better human beings. And we don't want to add to the number of those who've been impacted by substance use disorders or opiate epidemics or stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then do you have any success stories from that you'd like to share?
Absolutely. I'm going to pull up some because I like to read. I like to read the exact quotes that they say. Unified has given my boys a different outlook on life. We're so thankful. There's no way that we could have this type of opportunities and as far as resources with our boys. And then also mentoring adds to the village, right? And so when we talk about connecting and actually having not only the resources, but when you have a village, you're not only confident that I have somebody to help me and back me up with this, but I also have a person that can say, okay, I don't know what I'm going through. I don't know how to feel. I don't know this actual emotion. I don't know this actual, as far as I'm in an environment, I don't know how to deal with different circumstances when it comes to bullying, when it comes to also being presented substance uses. I don't know how to deal with that. How can I do that? The mentor helps navigate them along to not only have better success, but also ways to be better people. And so they give them the resources as well. I think that's not only the benefits of this program, because we do have first responders, so they can actually go to the person and say, listen, we have resources that I can connect you to our REACT team, Columbus Division Fire's REACT team. We can give you treatment. We can give you recovery. We can give you access to not only another agency, but we can provide those tools so that way you can become better for your family. And that's how you create family resilience. And then that's how you create community resilience.
Kind of curious how you match up folks with the you mentioned fire department or something.
Yes.
How do you find the right fit for people?
Well, it's a good old interview.
Interview?
Just a good old interview. Listen, I need to know who you are. I mean, we do understand our helpers need help, but we understand that they have a job first, right? And so with all the things that they do, we do understand that they are human as well. And so I get to know, and I do these personal interviews as myself. So I get to know the first responder. I get to know who that person is before they became a hero, quote unquote, right? Or how did they get into this service? And so I know their ins and outs as far as they like to color on the weekends, right? They like to go fishing. They like to build. They like to they have hobbies. They have interests. But that only, that contributes to the regulation of who they are, right? They regulate their minds by doing those hobbies. And that young person that I am connected to from, again, we get our young people from different schools across the Central Ohio region. And also we have referral processes from other agencies. But when we get that referral, as far as assessment, I identify, okay, this is a young person that has been impacted in a way of they're the oldest in their family. Okay, I have a first responder that is an oldest of 6 as well. Okay, there's another young person that has they like to go fishing. Okay, I have a first responder that likes to go fishing. So we like to make sure that we can connect them, or that they are not only associated, but they can actually be successful, because that's the end of the day. I want you to be successful. I want you to actually gain some type of, benefit from this program. And that's how I do our matches, essentially.
That's great. That's great. And it's great that we're partners in this work with this grant too. So I'm curious, what do you, in all of this work that you're doing, what do you take the most pride in?
Wow. That is a great question. So many things, but I take pride in seeing a young person, even a family member, impacted in a way in the next 6 months or the next year. And they come up to me and say, and they call me Miss K. They say, Miss K, listen, I thank you for that resource. I really was drowning. I really needed some type of help. Along with a young person that sees me, and I actually did this recently. I was in Jimmy John's, and a young person came up to me and he said, Miss K, you remember me? I said, I don't, wait a minute, do I remember? Yes, I do. And I said, oh, you were out and doing some things when you were young. And he said, I remember, Miss K. He said, but you helped me. He was like, you did not play games with me. You did not allow me to continue to do the things that I was going to do. And you connected me to some good things. And he was like, now I'm out here running my own store. I said, well, congratulations. So that right there brings me joy, because now that again goes against I'm mitigating those harms. You're not only thriving, but you're actually having a positive way to, your mindset is different. Your pathways are different. And so that's what brain science is about as well.
So can you tell folks at home a little bit about what's happening on the ground right now? Are there important programs or events you'd like to highlight?
Absolutely. In addition to what we do at Uni5d Outcomes, we have our touch point with our youth, with our mentors. So we have our touch point as far as monthly. And so we'll have one in July. We'll have a community event where our mentors will come out. We'll have our ladders. We'll have our fire trucks along with our cruisers, and we'll do some touch points, and then along with our nationwide as far as children's mobile unit. So we're going to start connecting and bring them out to do some things in July, so that way they can stay connected to health resources as well. And then we have Legacy U, as far as my brother's Keeper, and then also Linden, as far as they have their organization. So I have a number of peers who are doing great work in this organization, or in this Central Ohio region. And Yeah, I lean on them. I actually call them. Listen, I'm new to this world. This is my second year in this organization. Lyndon, Ralph, and his crew have been doing this for years. Dominic Jones and Legacy U have been doing their thing for years. And same with Aaron, Aaron and Epic Youth, they have been doing their organization for years. So I call on folks that have been doing a great body of work, and I look to those. But Unified Outcomes is ready and here to stay, and so that's how we are connecting and collaborating.
Love it. And I know, we have our Recover for Life campaign here at
Yes.
FCPH. It's sort of a crucial part of this work as well, I would say. What would you say about the importance of education and anti-stigma education in particular around mental health and addiction for young people?
I mean, awareness, right? So bringing not only the education, but also the opportunity to different, environments and different generations creates the ripple effect that can mitigate the stigmas of this is how I am. And this is what if I can get into all the areas, diabetes, and we talk about poverty and all the other areas of concerns as far as social determinants of health. But when you bring awareness and you bring a different outlook, because you have to have vision. You have to have vision to see that things can be changed. And so when Recovery for Life brings those, not only the ads and your marketing and also your wristbands. I have children I have the youth wearing the wristbands, right?
Absolutely.
Recovery for Life. And they may think it's just a wristband, but they're actually promoting in a bigger platform for amongst themselves, right? They're saying not only do I agree to it, but also I understand that this is a part of who I am. And again, so mitigating the stigmas by just getting in the community, right? As far as promotion and the ads and understanding that when you do that, you do decrease the numbers as far as when you talk about your mental health and you talk about ways to form connection and regulation and brain science. You could do all the things, but you need the awareness. You need the association. I can't dream if you don't tell me how to, right? Or if you don't show me how. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I'm going to say one more thing. You have to have hope. And so I believe Recovery for Life brings hope. And so when I have hope, I can put my faith into something. And so that helps the community to have. So that's what I want to do, usher in some type of hope. And then Recovery for Life does that.
Did you have anything else?
I've got two for you. So one, what can people do, or where can people go to find out more if they want to get involved?
Absolutely. So we do have our website, Uni5d Please take a look. And it's UNI, the number 5D.
A very unique spelling.
It is.
Yeah,
It is. I was very creative when I thought about this organization. And just to give you a little, back history, Unified reason for that is because I am connecting different, I'm cross-secting different sectors, right? Yeah. We have our public safety, we have our education. So I am unifying different areas as far as inside of our community, or different as far as platforms in our communities. But in addition to that, 5 means the number of grace. And I believe everyone needs a little bit of grace, no matter where you come from, no matter your background, no matter your ethnicity. However, you still have some type of grace that went along in your journey or came about in your journey. And so Unified is for that. But go to our website, go to our Instagram page. We have our Unified Outcomes Instagram, also our LinkedIn, but we're doing big things. Yeah.
Doing big things.
And then the only other thing I wanted to ask, and sometimes when we have guests on who have a lot of good material and stuff, we've asked you some questions here and there. Is there anything that you want to just take one last opportunity to let folks know, or something that we didn't ask? Or it's your time. Is there something that you want folks to know out there, or one more thing you want to say?
Absolutely. So Unified Outcomes, again, we are, I say trauma-informed organization, but we are a catalyst for change when we talk about prevention. We talk about the harms, but we are bridging that mentoring gap as well, right? And so I would ask you, let me ask you, did you have a mentor growing up when you were young?
I don't think so. I didn't.
I don't think I had a mentor either.
You didn't have a mentor?
No.
It's just sad.
Okay.
I would like one retroactively.
Would you have liked one?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would have liked one.
One that liked fishing would be great. Yeah. Do that.
Fishing, and then talking about the ways of, as far as your areas of concerns. But I think if you had one, do you think that it would have been beneficial to the trajectory of your livelihood?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. We actually were just talking to Dana. We had Dana in before you, and Dana. We were talking about sort of the expectation, the unset expectation on young men when they grow up, and I think that having a mentor to sort of talk about things that I wasn't comfortable talking to my parents about would have done a lot of great work for me that I unfortunately have had to do in therapy later in life, and that sort of thing. I think having a mentor would have been really super helpful.
No, same here.
And probably something that you would agree with is everyone could use a mentor,
I
right?
think so. I believe so. That's my
and that's what you're helping to do with folks.
For sure.
Kirstin Buckner, founder and executive director of Uni5d Outcomes. Kirstin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. This is awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Health is Real podcast from Franklin County Public Health. Want to chime in with your thoughts? Email us at fcph@franklincountyohio.gov. And did you know our Recover for Life campaign is a resource for people interested in substance use recovery in Franklin County? We know addiction is a disease impacting thousands of people in our area, and we're helping our community recover. Visit franklincountyrrecovers.com to learn more.